for today is 2 Peter 2:9. Then the Lord knows how to deliver the godly out of temptations, and to reserve the unjust under punishment for the day of judgment. These words are a sobering reminder of the sure nature of punishment for the wicked, but also a reminder of how God will deliver the godly and the righteous out of temptation and danger. To understand what Peter is saying here, we have to look at the context. He's dealing with the reality of false teachers, that just as there were false teachers in the past, there will be false teachers in the present and in the future, and they are going to be punished for their ungodly, deceptive ways of leading the people of God astray. Let's look at the words of that text. In chapter 2, verse 1, it says, "But there were also false prophets among the people, even as there will be false teachers among you, who will secretly bring in destructive heresies, even denying the Lord who bought them, and bring on themselves swift destruction. And many will follow their destructive ways, because of whom the way of truth will be blasphemed. By covetousness they will exploit you with deceptive words. For a long time their judgment has not been idle, and their destruction does not slumber." Peter, in those first few verses, reminds us that these false teachers will face sure destruction. That destruction is going to come swiftly upon them because how they have blasphemed the way of truth, that is, the gospel of Christ, and rejected the Lord God himself. Now, the rest of the text gives us three examples of how God has judged in the past, which gives us an assurance that he will judge in the future. But also in this is a beautiful reminder of how God has saved or delivered or protected the people of God, the godly and the righteous, in times of danger and of judgment. You look at verse 4, and it says, "For if God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them down to hell, and deliver them into chains of darkness, to be reserved to judgment, and did not spare the ancient world, but saved Noah, one of 8 people, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood on the world of the ungodly, and turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them to destruction, making them an example to those who afterward were to live ungodly, and delivered righteous Lot, who was oppressed by the filthy conduct of the wicked." So in this context, we find the next words of Peter. He says, "Then the Lord knows how to deliver the godly out of temptations, and to reserve the unjust under punishment for the day of judgment." Let's look at the words of this text. Here, Peter begins with the word "then." Now, that text actually does not have the word "then" in the original Greek. It is inserted there for the purpose of clarification and for the text to read more smoothly. And in the original Greek manuscript, the word "the definite article, is not there in the text. It is assumed by the context. He's talking about how God will judge the wicked. So this is the Lord God. He is the one who will judge the wicked and deliver the godly out of temptations. The word Lord here is the common word that we find in the New Testament that refers to Jesus Christ as Lord. Kurios means ruler or master and can be even understood as king. But it says here that the Lord knows how to deliver the godly out of temptations. The word knows here is not a common word that is translated know, gnosko. This is the Greek word oida. And the word oida has the idea of comprehending, or the ability to be able to consider something, perceive something. And he's telling us not so much that he just knows the facts of how to deliver the godly out of temptations, but he understands it completely, so much so that he's able to act on it. He comprehends how to deliver the godly out of temptations. The next word in our text is to deliver. The Lord knows how to deliver the godly out of temptations. There are a number of words in the Greek language that have been translated to deliver or to rescue or to save. This word is a very interesting word. It's the word ruomai. And the word ruomai has the idea of drawing or pulling to oneself, to rescue or to snatch up, to draw or to rescue a person to or to deliver a person to someone else. It is also used in the Lord's Prayer, or really the disciples' prayer in Matthew 6, where Jesus says that we are to pray, deliver us from the evil one. The word deliver is the word ruomai. And as one lexicon said, it could be understood to deliver me to yourself, for yourself. That's what is implied by the word ruomai. He's telling us that the Lord knows how to deliver to himself the godly out of temptations. In fact, this word translated to deliver is a present middle verb. And the idea is that he is delivering for himself, to himself. The intimacy of this deliverance here is noted. So the Lord knows how to deliver who? The godly, it says. The word translated here, godly, is eusebes. It comes from two words, the word eu, meaning good or well, and the word sebomai, which has the idea of paying homage or veneration. It came to be known in its combination to be devout or respectful or showing of due reverence. And the idea behind the word here, godly, is not so much godly character as it is someone who shows reverence and honor to God, a person who respects God, who is devoted to God. This is that godly person. So the Lord knows how to deliver the godly out of temptation. The word translated here, out, is the Greek word ek. It's a preposition that means out from within. And in this context, it's out from within the temptations. Now, the temptations here could refer to what you would think of when you hear the word temptations, like the temptations to sin or the temptations to do what is evil. But the Greek word translated here, temptations, pyrosmos, has been translated and can equally be understood as trials. So it can be temptations or trials. And these can simply refer to any difficult situation that anyone faces. It can imply danger, it can imply hostility, it can imply difficulty. All of those things can be found in the word trial or temptation. In fact, James himself says, count it all joy when you fall into various trials. That's exactly the same word here, pyrosmos. So what the Lord is telling us here, the Lord knows how to deliver the godly out of all kinds of trials and temptations. And then he says, to reserve the unjust. Now this is a most amazing thing to consider, because the word reserve, it is a present tense verb, which means he continually reserves them. But the word reserve means to guard. He actually guards or keeps them. You know, some people believe that they will be able to eventually escape the judgment of God, that sometime, somehow in the future, that they'll be able to get away from what God will bring on them. Or perhaps maybe they just believe that God will never do it. But the Bible tells us that he reserves that judgment. He keeps that judgment. He watches over that judgment. But in this case, it's not just the reservation and not just the keeping of the judgment itself, but he's telling us here that he actually keeps and reserves the unjust, adakios, the ones who are unrighteous, the ones who have no justice. He says he is keeping them. There's no way out from this impending judgment to come. He's the one who keeps the unjust and reserves them for future punishment. And there's the next word we find in our text, under punishment. Interesting way this is translated here with the word under. That's actually not in the Greek text. The word huper is not there, or any other preposition that could be rendered under. But I believe the translators are getting that from the actual word punishment. Now the Greek word translated here, punishment, it's a fascinating word. It's the Greek word kolazo. And this word has the idea of punishing. It's used also of mutilating. Some lexicons refer to it as the punishment that slaves would receive to incapacitate them. So this is a strong word. It even has the idea of agony that would come as a result of the punishment. It's used only one other time in the New Testament, and that's in Acts chapter 4 and verse 2, where we find the word translated there, punish. So this word is telling us that those who are being reserved by God, the unjust, the ungodly, the unrighteous ones, the unjust ones, are going to find themselves under punishment. And the Greek word for punishment is actually a present passive participle. This is important to understand because he's telling us that these unjust ones are characterized as the ones who are going to be punished. They are going to, present tense, continually, and the passive part, be punished. And this is a sad reality to think of, that those who have rejected God and rejected Christ are continually reserved and kept for the purpose of continual punishment. And that is coming in the future, as indicated by this text, for the day of judgment. In other words, all the ungodly are going to be kept for this very sobering and sad day. R.C. Sproul said these words, "Just as there are no ultimate tragedies for the believer, so for the impenitent unbeliever there are no ultimate blessings. Every good gift God bestows upon the wicked, for which the wicked do not glorify God or acknowledge his goodness with gratitude and worship, becomes a tragedy. The more gifts God gives that are despised by the recipient, the more guilt is incurred, so that to the wicked on Judgment Day, the gifts of God's kindness become tragedies." And that is the word for today.